Oh, yeah. Republicans have subpoenaed the agency for records related to its investigation of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell.
The House Oversight Committee wants to hear from former President Bill Clinton, his wife Hillary Clinton, former FBI directors James Comey and Robert Mueller, just to name a few, and they want them to testify before Congress. Drew Petrimo with The Hill has his eyes on the DOJ this morning. Spare a thought for all the employees at the agency on this Wednesday. Pretty busy.
Yeah, a lot of different subpoenas in the works here. You mentioned Bill and Hillary Clinton, 6 former attorneys general, 2 former FBI agents. Now, what the Oversight Committee wants them to testify is about what decisions were made in the prosecutions of Jeffrey Epstein. They want all that information there. Also, separately from the DOJ, the Oversight Committee wants all the so-called Epstein files, all the case files that have to do with the case, turned over them 2 weeks from yesterday, so not a lot of time to comply.
This is President Trump's second term, of course, so during the first term, presumably, there also could have been investigations into Jeffrey Epstein.
Well, look, this goes all the way back to the aughts. There was this case that was prosecuted in Florida. There was a federal case and a state case. The federal case is very interesting. Alex Acosta, who was a main figure in that, he was the prosecuting attorney, the federal prosecutor down in Florida, who was involved in this controversial non-prosecutorial agreement. He is not a part of this subpoena. So this investigation goes all the way back. That's why they want to subpoena even the Attorney General, who was Attorney General for George W. Bush, is a part of this subpoena list. So this investigation goes way back. There's a lot of information that the House Oversight Committee is going to give. It's an interesting spot because you have Republicans on that committee demanding all this information. Meanwhile, President Trump, the leader of the party, really wants to move on from this and focus on other issues.
So we know the DOJ has the audio and transcripts of the recent interview Ghislaine Maxwell did with Todd Blanche. She does not want that material released, but to your point, a lot of GOP members have said release all of this stuff. Let's listen to Missouri Representative Eric Burleson.
Merrick Garland, 2024, the Her recordings, they held him in contempt. Would you do the same for Pam Bondi if she doesn't come forward with this request?
We'll have to take a look at that. That's not something I've thought of, but look, if she's going to be completely defiant, then I think we may have to call a spade a spade.
So just want to clarify here, what Maxwell has opposed releasing is evidence from her grand jury that led to her prosecution and ultimate conviction. She's serving a 20-year sentence. Separately, in July, you mentioned Blanche went and interviewed Maxwell in prison in Tallahassee. There's supposedly an audio and a transcript of that. That's what the White House is discussing releasing. Not, and her attorneys so far haven't really weighed in on that aspect of it.
And after that, she was moved from the prison where she had been to a prison that's less secure, which had a lot of people scratching their heads.
Yeah, it just adds to the lore of this case. And the other issue of the grand jury evidence is also very important. President Trump has said that relevant and releasable evidence should be released. Maxwell is fighting that. She says she's taken her case all the way to the Supreme Court. She doesn't want any potential evidence to be released while her case is still being litigated. And what she's going to the Supreme Court for goes all the way back to that original non-prosecutorial agreement. She said that applies to her as well, and so that she shouldn't have to serve this whole 20-year sentence.
So we've got about 30 seconds left. If you can, wrap up the Russiagate part of what's going on at the DOJ.
Yeah, so there's this push by the Department of Justice to have prosecutors look into these accusations that Obama-era officials trumped up the evidence about the Russian election interference back in 2016. Their accusation is that they overhyped the notion that Russia wanted to help Trump. So she has instructed this investigation and says that if evidence is produced, that evidence should be produced for a grand jury to consider possible indictment.
You got it done in 30 seconds.
And we started this whole segment by saying, busy times at DOJ.
Busy time for Drew Petrimo as well. Drew, we appreciate it as always.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.